Cowboy found Apache locked in a barn and the mark on the door warned of justice returning. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Jared Thompson had always preferred the solitude of his ranch in the remote parts of the West. Surrounded by endless acres of open land, the wind in his hair, and the sky stretched above him, it felt like the world was his own. But, as all ranchers know, it wasn't always quiet. Things happened. Strange things. One evening, as Jared was finishing his work, he heard a faint sound, a rustling, barely audible, coming from the old barn. He paused, his hand resting on the handle of his axe. The sound was too soft to be an animal, and the wind was still. Something about the night felt off. He slowly made his way toward the barn, each step crunching in the dirt. As he got closer, he saw a figure, a person, hunched and hidden within the shadows. He stepped inside, and his eyes adjusted to the dim light. There, locked in the far corner of the barn, was a young Apache woman, her hands bound behind her back. Her face was bruised, her clothes ragged. Jared stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. Was she an intruder? A victim of some other rancher's cruelty? But before he could speak, she looked up at him with eyes that seemed to see straight through him, filled with a mix of fear and something else, a knowledge he couldn't quite place. Jared's heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing. He knew the stories. He had heard of the raids, the bloodshed, the struggles between the settlers and the native tribes. But there was something different about her, something that made him hesitate. He took a cautious step forward, his voice gruff. "Who are you?" The woman didn't speak. Instead, she simply stared at him, the weight of her gaze heavy, like she was waiting for something. As he moved closer, his foot brushed against something on the floor, a symbol, crudely etched into the dirt near the barn door. Jared stopped in his tracks. It was a mark, a symbol he recognized from his days in town. It was an Apache mark, a warning, a symbol of justice. The kind of justice that could bring retribution for wrongs, a promise that no harm would go unpunished. His blood ran cold. He had heard the stories of Apache warriors returning for those who wronged them, of revenge that could come from the most unexpected places. He reached for the key that hung from his belt, but as he touched it, the barn door creaked open, and the air grew heavy with the presence of more people. Jared looked up, his breath catching in his throat. The sun had set completely now, but in the dark, figures emerged from the surrounding trees, men and women, tall and imposing, with eyes that reflected the firelight from the barn. They moved like shadows, their bodies blending into the night, and Jared realized with a sickening certainty that the justice the mark spoke of was already here. As they stepped forward, their leader, a tall man with a scar running down his face, locked eyes with Jared. The cowboy could feel his heart pounding in his chest as the Apache leader spoke in a low, steady voice. "You've taken one of ours," he said, his words carrying the weight of years of pain and loss. "And now, justice will be served." I could feel the tension in the air as the Apache warriors slowly closed in. My heart was racing, my mind trying to process the situation. There was no escaping now. The leader of the group, a tall man with a deep scar running across his face, stepped forward. His eyes locked with mine, filled with a cold, calculating intensity. I had never felt so small in my life. "You've taken one of ours," he said, his voice deep and steady. "Now justice will be served." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I stood frozen, unsure of what to do. There was something about the way he spoke that made me feel as though my past had caught up with me, and it wasn't going to let me go. The woman in the barn, the one I had found, hadn't said a word. She had remained silent, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Was it fear? Or was it something deeper? "She's not the one you're after," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She's just a victim, like the rest of us. The Apache leader didn't respond immediately. Instead, he glanced over his shoulder at the other warriors, who stood silent, watching me with their piercing eyes. Their presence felt suffocating. You think that matters? He finally asked. You think your excuses will save you? His voice was like a whip, sharp and unforgiving. I could feel the weight of his words bearing down on me. This was it. There was no turning back now. I could feel the weight of my past mistakes crashing over me like a storm. The woman in the barn was a part of something much bigger than I had realized. A part of a history I had tried to forget. A history I had helped create. I had heard the stories of Apache warriors, of their relentless pursuit of justice, but I never thought I'd be on the receiving end. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice trembling despite myself. The leader stepped closer, his presence looming over me. You will help us now, he said simply. You will show us where the others are hiding. You will tell us what you know. I swallowed hard. I knew exactly what he was asking. He was asking for information. Information about the men I had once called my friends. Men I had fought beside, men who had done unspeakable things in the name of survival. I had always told myself that I was just trying to make a living, that I wasn't a part of the violence that had consumed this land. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I was just as guilty as the rest. I don't know where they are, I said, hoping my voice didn't betray the panic I was feeling. I don't have anything to give you. The leader stared at me for a long moment, as if weighing my words, deciding whether or not to believe me. Then, without a word, he turned away. The warriors behind him began to shift, their movements coordinated, like a well-oiled machine. It was as if they knew exactly what they were doing, like they had done this countless times before. I had no doubt that they had. The leader turned back to me. Then you will help in other ways, he said. You will stand trial, and you will face the consequences of your actions. I felt a chill run through me. Trial. Consequences. The words echoed in my mind. What had I gotten myself into? The leader waved his hand, signaling his warriors to move. Take him, he ordered. We're going to make sure justice is served. I was grabbed by the arms, pulled roughly from my spot, and shoved toward the group of warriors. The Apache leader followed behind, his eyes never leaving me. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew one thing for sure: my life would never be the same again. I could feel my heart pounding as I was roughly led through the darkness. The Apache warriors kept a firm grip on my arms, their fingers like iron. My mind raced as I tried to think of some way to escape, but I knew it was useless. The sounds of the night seemed to close in around me, every step echoing in the silence. The leader, still looming behind me, said nothing, his presence oppressive. We walked for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. Finally, we reached a clearing. The moonlight illuminated a large camp, surrounded by tents and fires. It was a place of both peace and danger, a strange balance that seemed to reflect the Apache people themselves. The warriors around me began to move with precision, setting up the camp for the night. The leader motioned for me to kneel, and I did so without hesitation, feeling the weight of his gaze on my back. There was no escape now. I had seen enough of the world to know that when you were surrounded by so many warriors, there was no point in fighting. I had to accept whatever was coming. I thought of the woman in the barn, Tala, and what had happened to her. Why had they taken her? What did they want from me? I had saved her, or at least I had tried to, and now I found myself here, a prisoner of the very people I had tried to help. The leader stepped forward, his boots crunching in the dirt. He stood tall, his eyes cold as they met mine. You will answer for your actions, he said, his voice steady. But you will not face death, not yet. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. My throat felt tight, my words trapped inside me. He glanced over his shoulder, signaling to one of the warriors, who immediately moved toward me, carrying a bundle of materials. The warrior handed the bundle to the leader, who unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a symbol, one that I recognized all too well. It was the mark of the Apache tribe, a symbol of justice. The leader held it up for me to see, his eyes never leaving mine. "You will wear this," he said, "so you remember that justice always returns." The weight of his words sank in. Justice. The word echoed in my mind. It was more than just a promise, it was a declaration. And I knew, without a doubt, that it would be the key to my fate. As the leader stepped back, I was left alone with my thoughts, my heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. The Apache people were not like us. They did not forgive easily. And I had no idea how I would make things right. But one thing was clear, I was about to face a reckoning. And there would be no escaping it. I woke up the next morning to the sounds of the camp stirring around me. The crackling of fire, the quiet murmurs of the Apache warriors, and the distant call of a hawk. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and earth. The leader, still silent, watched me from across the fire. His presence was like a shadow, always looming, never far from sight. I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Would I be released? Or would I be left to face the consequences of my past actions? I had heard stories about the Apache, stories about how they dealt with their enemies, how justice was always served, but I never thought I would be the one at the center of it. The mark I had been given the night before felt heavier now. It was a constant reminder of the debt I owed, and of the justice I would have to face. The leader finally stood, his tall figure cutting through the morning light. "Today, you will face your trial," he said, his voice low and firm. "But it will not be as you expect." The words sent a shiver down my spine. What did he mean? Trial? I had never imagined anything like this. The warrior who had handed me the mark the night before stepped forward, his eyes unreadable. He motioned for me to rise. "Follow me," he said. I stood slowly, feeling the weight of their eyes on me. I had no choice but to follow, so I did. The camp around me seemed to quiet as I walked. The warriors moved like shadows, and I couldn't help but notice how their gaze never left me. We walked for what felt like miles, the path winding through trees and rocky hills. As we moved, the leader stayed a few steps ahead, his back straight, his expression unreadable. Eventually, we arrived at a clearing, where a circle of stones had been placed in the center. The warriors began to gather around the circle, their faces stern and watchful. I was pushed forward, and I stood in the center of the circle, feeling the eyes of the entire tribe on me. The leader stepped forward, his hands raised to signal for silence. He spoke again, his voice carrying over the quiet. "This is not just a trial of your actions, but a trial of your soul. You will face the justice of the Apache, and you will answer for the wrongs you have done." My heart pounded in my chest as I stood there, unable to speak, unable to move. The words echoed in my mind, and I realized just how far I had fallen. This wasn't about a simple crime. This was about redemption, about facing the consequences of a life built on mistakes. The leader's eyes softened slightly, as if he was waiting for something from me. I had no idea what, but I knew that whatever it was the key to my fate. "You have a choice," he said, his voice quieter now, but still full of authority. "You can stand here, face the judgment of the tribe, and accept what comes, or you can walk away, knowing that justice will still find you." The choice hung in the air, heavy and thick. There was no running, no hiding from the past. No matter what I did, justice would come. But would I have the strength to face it? The tribe stood in silence, waiting for my answer, and I realized that this was my moment. My chance to finally make things right, to face the consequences, and perhaps, to begin to heal the wounds I had caused. I took a deep breath, looked around at the warriors who had once been my enemies, and spoke the only words that felt true. "I choose to face it," I said. "I choose justice." I stood there in the center of the circle, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. The Apache leader's eyes locked onto mine, waiting, patient. The silence was suffocating. The air around me was thick with expectation, and I could feel the eyes of the entire tribe on me. This was more than just a trial, it was a moment of reckoning. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew that whatever happened, it would change everything. My mind raced with thoughts of the past, of the mistakes I had made, of the people I had hurt, of the decisions that had led me to this very moment. But there was no turning back now. The choice had been made. I had chosen justice. The leader raised his hand, and the murmur of the tribe quieted. "You have spoken," he said, his voice calm, but it carried an undeniable authority. "Now you will face what is just." He gestured to the warriors surrounding the circle. They stepped forward, not with weapons drawn, but with an air of solemn respect. I could see the weight of their actions in their eyes. These were people who had lived through battles, through struggles, and they knew what it meant to face justice. The leader motioned for me to stand and to walk to the center of the circle. As I moved, I felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about me, it was about what was right. It was about facing the consequences of my actions and taking responsibility for the life I had led. I had always tried to escape, to hide from the pain of my past. But now, there was no escape. The trial was not just for me, it was for everyone I had ever wronged. The warrior closest to the leader stepped forward, holding a small, intricately carved wooden bowl. He placed it in front of me, and the leader spoke once more. "This is the test. You will drink from this bowl, and in doing so, you will show that you accept the judgment of the Apache. You will show that you are ready to face the consequences." I looked down at the bowl, my heart pounding in my chest. What was in it? I had no idea. But the leader's gaze was unwavering, and I knew there was no turning back. The bowl was pressed into my hands, and I could feel the cool, smooth wood against my palms. I raised it to my lips and took a deep breath before drinking. The liquid was bitter, sharp, and tasted of something ancient, something that felt like the earth itself. It burned as it went down, but I didn't flinch. I knew that this was the moment. This was where everything changed. As soon as I finished, I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me, and my vision blurred. The world seemed to tilt for a moment, and I felt as though I was being pulled in two different directions. But then, just as quickly it passed. My mind cleared, and I looked up to see the leader watching me with a small, almost imperceptible nod. "You have taken the first step," he said. "Now you will face the judgment of the tribe." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. The words echoed in my mind. Judgment. I had no idea what that would mean, but I knew one thing for sure: it was time to face whatever came next. The leader motioned for me to follow him, and without another word I stepped forward, ready to face whatever awaited me. The warriors parted to allow me through, and I walked slowly toward the heart of the camp, my mind racing with a mixture of fear and determination. Whatever happened next, I knew that I was no longer running. I was ready to face the consequences. And that, in itself, was a form of justice. I followed the leader through the camp, my thoughts racing. The firelight flickered in the distance, casting long shadows over the ground. The tribe moved with a quiet grace, their presence almost otherworldly. The air felt heavy with anticipation, every step I took echoing in my chest. We reached the center of the camp, where a large stone circle had been set up, and I was instructed to stand in the center. The warriors gathered around, their eyes never leaving me. There was no escape now. The leader stepped forward, his face calm but his eyes sharp. "This is where your fate will be decided," he said, his voice carrying through the still air. "You have chosen justice. Now you will prove it." My heart raced as I stood there, unsure of what was coming. The warriors remained silent, their faces unreadable. The leader raised his hand, signaling for one of the warriors to step forward. A tall man, his face marked with paint, approached, holding a bundle of leather in his hands. He untied it, revealing a set of scales, ancient and worn, but still functional. He placed the scales on the ground in front of me. "You will face judgment," the leader said. "The scales of justice will weigh your actions. If you are found worthy, you will be free to go. If not—" He let the words hang in the air, his meaning clear. The weight of his words settled over me like a storm cloud. I had no idea how the scales would judge me, but I knew that whatever happened, it would be a turning point in my life. The warrior with the scales motioned for me to step forward. I did, my hands trembling as I approached the ancient tool of judgment. The scales looked so simple, yet I knew they held the power to change everything. I stood silently as the warrior placed a small stone on one side of the scale. It tipped slightly under the weight, the metal creaking softly. He then placed another stone on the other side. It balanced. Each stone represents an action, the leader explained. One side represents your wrongdoings, and the other represents your actions to make things right. The scales will show us if the weight of your wrongs outweighs your attempts to redeem yourself. The warrior continued to add stones, one by one, each representing a part of my past. I felt the weight of each one pressing down on me. The wrongs I had committed, the people I had hurt, all of it was being laid out before me. But then, the warrior paused. He picked up another stone, one larger than the rest, and placed it carefully on the side of the scale that represented redemption. As the stone settled, the scale shifted, slowly tipping toward the side of justice. I looked up at the leader, my heart pounding. He watched me silently, his face unreadable. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The scales balanced, just enough to show that I had made efforts to right my wrongs. But was it enough? You have been judged, the leader said at last. Your efforts to make amends are noted. But the path ahead is still yours to walk. You must continue to prove yourself, every day, with your actions. I nodded, my breath catching in my throat. I had been given a chance to live a different life, a life where I could make things right. But the road ahead would not be easy. The leader stepped back, and the warriors slowly began to disperse. The silence in the air was thick with the weight of the moment. I knew that the judgment had been fair, but it was just the beginning. As I turned to leave the circle, the leader called out one last time. Remember, he said, his voice carrying through the quiet camp. Justice is not a one-time act. It is a lifetime of choices. With those words, I stepped away, ready to begin the next chapter of my life, whatever it may hold. I walked away from the circle, my heart still pounding in my chest. The firelight flickered in the distance, casting long shadows over the ground, but it was the stillness of the Apache camp that unsettled me. The warriors had all gone back to their tents, their movements silent and measured. I could still feel their eyes on me, even though they had dispersed. I had been given a chance, but what did it truly mean? Could I live up to the judgment that had been passed on me? The words of the leader echoed in my mind. Justice is not a one-time act. It is a lifetime of choices. How was I supposed to carry that weight? I had spent so much of my life running from my mistakes, avoiding the consequences of my actions. Now I was being asked to face them, not just for one moment, but for the rest of my life. I had no idea where to begin. As I sat alone by the fire, I thought about Tala, the Apache woman I had found locked in the barn. What had happened to her? I had tried to help her, to do what was right, but in the end, it felt like nothing more than a fleeting gesture. The people of the Apache tribe had given me a chance, but I couldn't help but feel that I still had so much to prove. I had a long road ahead of me, and I knew it would not be easy. The past would continue to haunt me, but I couldn't let it define me. I had made a choice to face justice, and now I had to live with the consequences. It wasn't just about paying for my wrongs, it was about changing who I was, becoming someone worthy of the chance I had been given. The leader's words haunted me as I lay on my bedroll that night. You will face judgment, he had said, but you will not face death, not yet. I wondered what that meant. What kind of judgment would I face now that the trial was over? And how would I know if I was truly free? The next morning, I woke early, before the sun had fully risen. The camp was quiet, with only the sounds of the fire crackling and the soft murmur of the warriors preparing for the day. I stood up and stretched, feeling the weight of the night still on my shoulders. I needed answers, but I didn't know where to find them. As I walked through the camp, I noticed the tribe was starting to gather around the fire. The leader was there, standing tall and still, his eyes focused on something far away. I approached him slowly, unsure of what to say. He noticed me before I could speak. "You've made your choice," he said without looking at me. "Now you must prove it." I nodded, unsure of how to respond. He turned to face me then, his expression unreadable. "The Apache do not offer second chances lightly," he said. "But we offer them nonetheless. Your actions from this day forward will determine your fate. Do not think this is over." I understood what he was saying. This wasn't just about the judgment I had faced yesterday. It was about how I would live today, tomorrow, and every day after. The Apache tribe had given me an opportunity, but it was up to me to make the most of it. It was up to me to prove that I was worthy of redemption. The leader motioned for me to follow him, and I did. We walked in silence, my thoughts swirling with a mix of fear and determination. I didn't know where this path would lead, but I knew I had no choice but to follow it. We reached the edge of the camp, where a group of warriors stood waiting. The leader stopped and turned to face me. "You will leave this place today," he said. "But you will not leave alone. You will take responsibility for your actions. You will help us. And you will start by proving your worth to the people of this tribe." I was silent for a moment, processing his words. What did he mean? What was I supposed to do? The leader looked at me, his eyes steady. "You will go to the settlement," he said. "There are things that need to be done. You will prove that you are capable of more than just surviving. You will show that you are capable of making things right." I swallowed hard. This was my chance, but it was also my test. The leader nodded once. "Go now," he said. "Prove yourself." And with that, I turned and walked toward the unknown, knowing that the road ahead would not be easy, but that it was the only one I could take. I walked through the camp with a heavy heart, my mind still racing from the leader's words. He had given me a task, a chance to prove myself, but the weight of what he had said lingered in my chest. "Prove yourself," he had told me. But how? What was I supposed to do to make things right? The Apache people were not known for their forgiveness, and though they had given me a chance, I could sense their judgment still hanging over me. I had been given a path to redemption, but it was up to me to walk it. As I moved through the camp, I saw the warriors preparing for their day. Their movements were purposeful, like they had a mission, a focus that was absent in me. I had no such clarity. I was still lost in the confusion of my past actions. But I couldn't afford to dwell on that. The leader had set me on this path, and now I had to follow through. I reached the edge of the camp where the horses were being saddled. The leader stood there, waiting for me, his eyes still unreadable. He motioned for me to approach. "It's time," he said, his voice low but firm. I nodded and walked toward him, the sound of my boots crunching in the dirt beneath me. "You will ride with me," he continued, "to the settlement. There is work to be done. And you will prove your worth with your actions." I didn't speak. There was nothing to say. I had no choice but to follow. The leader handed me a reins, and we mounted our horses. The ride was long and quiet. The landscape stretched out before us, a vast expanse of rugged terrain, hills and valleys stretching into the horizon. I could feel the weight of the journey ahead of me. I wasn't just riding to a settlement. I was riding to face my past, to prove that I could change, to prove that I was worthy of the second chance the Apache had given me. As we approached the settlement, I could feel the tension building in my chest. What was I supposed to do once we arrived? The settlement seemed like just another reminder of everything I had done wrong. The people there had suffered because of men like me. The leader seemed to sense my unease. "This is your test," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "You will show them that you are not what you once were. You will show them that you can be trusted." I nodded, but inside, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. How could I earn their trust? The people of the settlement had every right to hate me, to fear me. What did I have to offer them? When we arrived at the settlement, the leader dismounted and walked toward the people who were gathered near the center. They looked up as he approached, their faces wary, their eyes sharp. I stayed back, watching. The leader spoke with them briefly, and then he motioned for me to step forward. My heart raced as I walked toward the group. I could feel their eyes on me, weighing me, judging me. I stopped in front of them, unsure of what to say. The leader looked at me for a moment, then spoke. "This man has come to prove himself," he said. "He has chosen the path of justice. It is up to him to show you his worth." I felt the weight of their gazes on me, and for the first time, I understood just how much I had to lose. I had no idea what would happen next. Would they accept me? Or would they see through my efforts as just another attempt to escape my past? I didn't know. But I knew one thing: I couldn't back down now. I had chosen this path, and I would face whatever came next. I cleared my throat, my voice rough but steady. "I know what I've done," I said. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm here to prove that I can change. To show that I can make things right." The words felt hollow as they left my lips, but they were the truth. All I had were my actions, and I hoped they would be enough. I stood before them, the people of the settlement, their eyes on me, sharp and full of judgment. I could feel the weight of their gaze, each of them measuring me, looking for signs that I was truly different, that I had changed. The leader of the Apache tribe stood silently beside me, his expression unreadable. He had given me a chance, but now it was up to me to prove that I deserved it. I could hear the wind rustling through the trees behind me, the distant sound of animals moving in the fields. The silence stretched on, thick with expectation. Finally, an elderly man stepped forward from the group. His face was lined with age, his eyes bright despite the years. He looked at me for a long moment, his gaze steady. "You say you want to change," he said, his voice soft but firm. "But words are nothing without actions. Show us what you are made of." I nodded, trying to steady my breath. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment where I would either prove myself or fail. There was no middle ground. I looked around, taking in the faces of the people around me. They had every right to be skeptical. I had been a part of the violence, a part of the reason they had suffered. But now, I was asking for their trust. And it was up to me to earn it. "What would you have me do?" I asked, my voice steady despite the fear that was gnawing at me. The elderly man stepped aside and gestured toward a group of women standing near the fire. They were cooking, preparing food, their movements quick and efficient. "There is work to be done here," he said. "Help them. Show us that you are not the man you were." I didn't hesitate. I walked toward the women, my steps steady, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached, one of them looked up at me, her eyes wary but not unfriendly. She didn't speak, but I could see the question in her gaze. What was I doing here? Why was I standing in front of her, a man who had once been her enemy? I took a deep breath and spoke. "I want to help," I said simply. "Tell me what to do." For a moment, she didn't answer. She simply studied me, as though deciding whether or not to trust me. Then, slowly, she handed me a bundle of herbs. "Chop these," she said. It was a simple task, one that required nothing more than patience and care. I took the bundle from her and began to work, the knife in my hand moving slowly, deliberately. As I worked, I could feel the eyes of the others on me, watching, waiting. The weight of their gaze never left me, but I didn't look up. I focused on the task at hand. With each slice of the knife, I felt a small weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I was proving that I could do something, that I was capable of contributing, of making amends. Time passed slowly, but the work was simple. The sun began to rise higher in the sky, the warmth spreading across the camp. As I finished chopping the herbs, I handed them back to the woman, who took them with a nod. She didn't speak, but her expression had softened. I had done the work without complaint, without hesitation. That, at least, was something. The elderly man watched me as I finished, his expression still unreadable. "It's a small thing," he said finally. "But it is a start." I nodded, understanding. It wasn't about the task itself, It was about showing that I could be trusted to do something, no matter how small. I had taken the first step. But I knew that it was only the beginning. There would be more work to do, more to prove. But for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was on the path to redemption, and though I didn't know where it would lead, I knew that I had to keep moving forward. The people of the settlement had given me a chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. I turned back toward the leader, who was still watching me from a distance. He nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of what I had done. There was no praise, no fanfare. But I didn't need it. The work was its own reward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something right.